I'm going to share with you a way of beginning to get a little more of what you want out of life. Because when you're a self-sabotager, it can be very difficult sometimes to think that you're going to get what you want from life. And if you're good at self-sabotage, you'll constantly be messing up your own chances of any kind of success in certain areas. Now, this all stems from something I learned a few years ago, and I still do it, and it definitely helps to reframe things. And I believe it's definitely beginning to make a difference in helping me to move from where I am towards where I want to be. And this method works for an awful lot of people once you begin to get to grips with it. So let's start by thinking about this. What is it you don't want in your life? Have a think about that. You know, you might say, well, I want more money. I don't have enough money. I want a relationship. I don't have anyone close to me in my life. I want a better job, or in my case, I want a job. What is it that you don't have? What don't you want? Now, money is a big deal. I don't have enough money, it's a big deal. And what I want you to think about is, well, what's the alternative there? What's the inverse of that? Because I've realized that when you understand what it is you don't want, what you do want often becomes quite apparent. So my question is, once you've worked out what you don't want, start thinking about what it is that you do want. What would you like to replace what you don't want with? Now, this can be very general, and for some people this is quite a challenge. It certainly has been difficult for me to do this. But once you begin to get to grips with this, I urge you to start writing down the things that you want. To start putting them down on a piece of paper. You don't have to keep the piece of paper, but the actual act of writing things down starts to solidify it in the consciousness, because you're seeing things and you're doing what it is you don't want. And once you begin to understand what it is you do want, which is often the opposite of what you don't want, start to elaborate on that, expand it out. I want more money. Well, what would more money give you? More importantly, how would it feel? I want a relationship. What would a relationship give you? How would it feel? And start writing these things down. You don't need to keep the piece of paper. You can if you want. It's often handy to do that, especially if you can put it somewhere where you can see it on a regular basis. Doesn't necessarily have to be visible to anybody else either. But the key thing is begin to shift your thinking from what you don't want towards what you do want. Now, sometimes what you don't want can be very, very strong. If you're struggling to pay the bills, this is going to be an incredible emotional drain on you. This is what you don't want. And if you're focused on not being able to pay the bills, you're not going to be allowing yourself to be open to ideas to make your financial situation better. Likewise, if you're focused on how miserable it is being single, you're not going to be open to ideas. Subconsciously, you're not going to be open to ideas to begin to change that situation. And this is where beginning to think about what it is that you want as the opposite of what you don't want really, really gains some power and some traction. Now, this takes a little bit of work, and there's no right or wrong answers. But the more you do this, the more you play around with shifting your thinking from what you don't want towards what you do want, the more likely you are to get what it is that you want. As I said in a previous video, if you don't know where you're going, then any path will take you there. And all we're doing with this exercise is beginning to take your mind away from what you don't want towards what you do. Now, I recommend that you be persistent with this. Stick with this, because this is a very, very powerful exercise. Your subconscious will go to work on anything you tell it. It's a problem solver. The brain is a problem solver. And when you start to shift from what you don't want towards what you do want in your thinking, it's a bit like saying, I want a red Tesla, and suddenly you start seeing a lot of red Teslas. It's quite a common thing. The more you start thinking about what it is you do want, focusing on what you do want instead of what you don't want, the more you'll be open to ideas and about getting what you want. You will see things that have been right in front of you before, but you just haven't been open to seeing them. Now, this isn't a new thing. This goes back a long, long way. All the books on success in any endeavor start with what you want. But it's very, very easy to fall into the trap of just being focused on what you don't want. So this is a simple exercise to begin to move you from what you don't want towards what you do. What do you want? Start with what you don't want. What don't I want? And then what's the opposite of that? If I don't want to be feeling poor. I want more money. I don't want to feel lonely. I want a relationship. You know, I don't want this stinking job. I want a better job. I don't want to be unemployed. I want a job. I don't like living where I'm living. Well, I want to live somewhere nicer. And the more specific you can get with this, the better off you'll be. Because you will, I promise you, you will start to see opportunities. Doors will start to open. Things will become apparent to you. And the chances are good they've been there all along. You just weren't open to seeing them. So, move from where you don't want towards where you do want by being aware of what it is that you do want.